Welcome to the Develop Yourself podcast, where we teach you everything you need to land your first job as a software developer by learning to develop yourself, your skills, your network, and more. I'm Brian, your host. So this week, a student at Parsity bombed the tech interview. They got an interview, they went to it, they failed miserably, and they felt terrible about it. And when I saw the kinds of questions they got asked, I thought, geez, this is what's wrong with the entire hiring process right now in tech. Now, people complain about the hiring process all the time. They say it's unfair, it's biased, no one will do this in real life. But there's a much bigger and more sinister problem happening that I want to talk about. And I also want to expose to you what it's like to be on the other side of the hiring table and some things that you might not know that will either make you feel a little bit better or maybe a little bit worse, but at least you'll know more how to play the game of interviews. So, what is wrong nowadays? The only winner in this game of tech hiring seems to be LinkedIn. Because on one side of the aisle, you have employers who can't seem to find good people. Despite what you've heard about the market being overcrowded or flooded with cheap talent or whatever it is, or Meta's now laying off 5% of their engineers. And maybe you think, oh no, they're going to take my job for $100K in the Midwest. No, they're not. They're going to other high growth startups for crazy inflated salaries because they have to make their lives work. They have mortgages and families and a lifestyle they're accustomed to, and they'll find more places because they have that Meta badge next to them. On the other end of the spectrum, you have a ton of employees and people that want to get hired on LinkedIn, spamming recruiters and people like that, and then getting filtered out. In the middle of all this, you have AI, right? So you have candidates using AI to pump out more and more junk to filters, which are now using AI to filter you. And then people on either side are getting very distrustful of the other. So now you have these 7-round interviews, these weeks-long interviews. It used to be 1 or 2 interviews and you were hired. Now it's gotten to 3, then 4, then 5, then 6, then 7, then 8. I just went through a few interviews myself. Don't tell anybody. And I failed one and I did okay on the other one. I got a tentative offer on one as well. So I actually did like 3 interviews and I'm still doing a few more. I do interviews all the time, by the way. I'm just not talking about this stuff. I like to do interviews because I'm a little weird. Also, they're kind of a fun game to play and the stakes are high and the rewards are even higher. You're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars in some cases. So yeah, it's a fun game to play because the reward is really great. So what did I learn from doing this recently? Well, one story stands out because I was reached out to 8 months after getting auto-rejected from a company. Guess how that auto-rejection worked? AI. And if you go on their Glassdoor, I'm not going to mention this company at all. I kind of respect the fact that they admitted they messed up and then they came back and tried to make things right. They still didn't go with me. Hey, no harm, no foul, or maybe a big foul, but not too much harm. I don't know. So they reached out to me after 8 months and said, oh, sorry, we made a mistake. We had a human review your code or review your thing, your challenge, and we thought you actually are good enough to go to the next round of the interview. And I thought, how many candidates did you screw up on that in 8 months, you're now reaching back out to people to ask them to reapply essentially? In 8 months, if you're any good, or if you just don't have terrible luck, you've already been hired, just guaranteed, right? Especially for a senior engineering manager position. Pretty hard for me to believe you're going to be on the market a full 8 months if you're actively applying. I know that's the case for some people, but that's not the case for most people. I just don't know anybody personally that I've ever seen that happen to. So we have this problem, right? And then to filter out people that are now using AI to beat interviews have increased in difficulty. So who's winning in all this? LinkedIn, right? They're getting you to get on the platform, share. They're having recruiters on there because it's the only game in town to play where they can find people. And then you have candidates that are flocking there every day and getting fed ads and having people like me that are selling courses or products or telling you to join my program. You should, by the way, go to parsity.io/inner-circle. But is that really why you're on there? Do you really want to be on LinkedIn? Like I do personally, but you probably don't. Like I enjoy the whole social media game. I'm also a little bit older. I've had a lot of fun writing on LinkedIn. It's been a great place for me to build a community. Truly, seriously, I really do mean that. I've met a lot of you out there that are listening to this through LinkedIn or through the podcast, and you've interacted with me, and I genuinely like that kind of stuff. But for most people, they don't, and yet they're there. There's a monopoly going on LinkedIn, and they don't really care if you get a job or not. What do they care? They're eating off ad revenue, not whether or not you get a job. Hey, we've noticed that listeners of this show tend to be the best applicants and people to work with in our program, parsity.io/inner-circle. This is a unique program, unlike any other boot camp out there, where we focus not only on the hard skills you'll need to make a transition, but also on the career change aspect, and make sure you have a solid foundation as a person to actually commit and stick to a rigorous schedule. If you want to work with me and my partner Zubin, a former engineer at Google, apply for one of 5 spots that are open this month. Go to parsity.io/inner-circle or just schedule a call by clicking the link in the show notes. Now back to the episode. So if you don't know this about me, a few years ago, I was an engineering manager. In fact, just up until last year, I was an engineering manager until I was laid off. And now I work at a very small startup doing much more technical focused work. But I was a big old people manager at a big fancy company, and I got to hire people. And let me tell you, I've been on the hiring board at a few different companies, and this may shock you. There is no standardization. There's no handbook you get given and saying, hey, here's how you're going to evaluate a candidate. Doesn't exist. So what do? You get together with a group of people that care, and you say, what should we do? How should we judge these candidates? And then one person says, lead code. And the other person says, that's a great idea. My cousin works at Google, and they said that they only do lead code. And you think, well, are we as good as Google? Well, no, but we could be if we only hire the best. And now we're going to make sure we only ask hard lead code questions. Another person on the team asks, hey, could you solve this question? And they all go silent because none of them could. That doesn't stop them from asking the questions, though. This is literally how I've seen this play out. So maybe you're like this student that was at Parsity or that is at Parsity that just bombed an interview, and you're thinking this is some sort of indication that you are a bad engineer or that you should go studying data structures and algorithms or system design or JavaScript deeper. It could very well be. It could very well be. But it could also very well be that your interviewer has no freaking clue what they're asking, right? You're putting way too much trust in these people. So when I was creating the process to hire, I noticed we were losing out on a lot of good candidates, right? We were doing this 5-round, super long interview. And this is during the pandemic, or this is right after the pandemic, actually, when you started seeing a ton of layoffs. So maybe you're thinking, oh my God, you must have been able to get whoever you want. Wrong. You can get whatever junior person you want. You can't get whatever senior person you want, because I don't care what the market's like. If you're good and you're somewhat visible out there, you're going to be in high demand. So we had 2 candidates slip through the cracks because we were too slow to act. And I thought about it a lot. I said, what's the point of all this? It's basically that we don't trust ourselves enough to make an offer to a candidate. And we're so scared we're going to make the wrong decision that we got to have them jump through an enormous amount of hoops and all these silly little one-off interviews with people to make sure they're not crazy and they can solve these problems that have nothing to do with our day-to-day work. And then we may get a candidate that's okay. They'll leave in a year and we'll do the whole thing over again. Why are we doing this? I shortened the interview down to 2 rounds. We got amazing candidates. We got really good junior developers into our company that stayed there until we were all laid off, unfortunately. But they were some of the best people I've worked with. Seriously. And I hope that if you're listening to this and you are an engineering manager or you're in some position to actually change your interview structure, you seriously consider this. I firmly believe that you should be quick to hire and maybe quick to fire, to be honest. If you're quick to hire based on some sort of litmus test, and also depending on the complexity, the size of your team, there's a lot of factors that go into how much interview weight you need to press, right? Basically, if you're Google size, you can have a super standardized interview where you have really difficult questions because you have too many people trying to get in and you're working on really complex stuff that runs the whole world. If you're a 10-person startup and you're building the first version of an app, do you really need to have more than 1 or 2 technical rounds? And should they be on general programming skills or should they be on actual practical skills? I would opt for the practical stuff. But again, if you're a candidate out there and you're going through this interview process, I want you to do a couple things. Here's what I do, actually. So you don't get in this terrible doom loop or you go in this weird hamster wheel style of learning that you fail an interview, you think, oh my God, I failed because they asked me an obscure question. And now I have to firmly and solely study this obscure junk that they asked me in an interview. You need to take the interview with a grain of salt. Wait for a day, and you're not going to get feedback, most likely. Still seek it out. So if you can, say, hey, what could I have done better in this interview? Was there anything you suggest that I improve on? 99% of the time, you're going to get zero feedback back. Now, this is where it comes to you. You need to take an audit of your own knowledge. If they asked you a LEET code hard question, a question that revolves some sort of really intimate knowledge with data structures or algorithms or a very particular algorithm that you'd have to be familiar with in order to beat the challenge they gave you, you need to think, is this something I want to spend days, hours, even a second thinking about? Or is this something that I'm going to write off as an anomaly? Am I only going for large companies? Then maybe I just don't care about this. Am I only going for small companies? Then maybe I don't care about this. If you're only going for top tier tech companies, then stop worrying about React stuff and almost exclusively study DSA, data structures and algorithms. If you're only going for mid-tier, lower tier tech companies or non-tech companies, probably don't study so much data structures and algorithms, and only study like practical stuff, like how to build stuff with vanilla JavaScript or HTTP status codes or, the types of trivia questions that you often get asked at these places. Here's the next thing that you might find really surprising about the tech interview. Besides it being completely unstandardized, just kind of made up as you go, completely just pulling rabbits out of a hat type of deal, right? When it comes time to the offer, this is something I didn't know. Now, at some companies, they make this very clear. They say, here's your offer, and that's it. You don't get a chance to negotiate. Whatever we tell you, what you're going to get, that's what you're going to freaking get. Now, a lot of other companies, though, most companies, I'd say, don't have this rule. So what will happen is they'll come at you and say, hey, you know what? We really like you. This happened to me, actually. I'd meet a candidate. I'm like, I got to make this person an offer. I'd ask HR. I'd say, hey, I want to make this person an offer. They say, great. Here's the salary range you can offer. You never start at the top of the range. You can start at the mid, bottom of the range, depending on how much wiggle room you want to have. Because the expectation is that that candidate will come back and say, you know what? Thank you so much for that offer, but I was hoping to get a little bit more. And then you say, oh, great, because I have a little bit more for you, right? If I started at the top of the range and they came back and asked that question, I'd be screwed, right? And so would HR. They'd be, what the hell, Brian? Why'd you offer them the top of the range? And now they'd get pissed, right? Rightfully so. They say, well, we can't just afford to give everybody the top of the range, right? And we don't want to, and you're not going to look like a very good manager. And when we tell your boss, that's going to hurt you. So there's a game being played that a lot of us aren't aware of. So when it comes to negotiations, know that most places expect you to, and they've left a buffer. Now, if you don't know the game is being played and you simply just say, oh, okay, I'll take whatever you got, you've lost tens of thousands of dollars. I played this game. I didn't know this game was being played until one day I had competing offers. I had an offer for a startup where they were offering me 150 or 160,000, something like that. This was years ago. And I went back to my company and said, hey, nice knowing you. See ya, thanks, but no thanks, right? You're paying me 120. These guys got 150, 160. I'm out. They say, hey, just hold on 1 second there, buddy. We'll match them. I'm like, what? You'll match them? Well, that's 30,000 more than you're paying me. Can you do that? And they're like, oh yeah, we can do that. I'm like, well, wait, but how is this supposed to happen? They said, well, you never asked. And I thought, is that really how this works? It is how it works. People overcomplicate this one all the time. I was working with a person actually before I started Parsity, or before I took over Parsity. I was mentoring software developers, and one guy was out of work for a while, and he got an offer. I think it was like for $70K or something like that. He's in the Midwest. I said, that's good. I said, we're going to come back. We, meaning you, are going to come back and ask for more. I said, how much more? He said, just, I don't know, 15% more, dude. Just do some math. He's like, well, how am I going to justify that? Do I do like some research and what about the area I'm in and all this? I said, dude, you don't have to think that much. Just say this. Just say, I'm really happy that you gave me this offer, and I really appreciate it, and I want to work with this team. But I was hoping to come in more at this range. They can say one of two things. No, we can't do that. Or two, yeah, sure, that sounds good. Or maybe a third one is like, we can't really meet you there, but we can come somewhere in the middle, right? Now, people always get nervous and say, what if they just yank the whole offer away? And I'm thinking, what world do you live in where somebody would do that? Imagine this. You've interviewed 10 people. You read 200 resumes. You finally get a person you want to give an offer to. They say, hey, I want some more money. You say, what? And you yank it away from them. And then you go back to the drawing board, all because they asked for a little bit more. The only time when this would make sense is if somebody said, hey, I'm going to offer you 100K. And you said, cool, I want 200. And you look at them with a straight face and they look at you. And they're like, what's wrong with you? Why? You can't just ask for double, you fool. Then you start thinking, is this person all the way there? Right? Then you say, you know what? Maybe this isn't a great fit. If you expect 200 and we're giving you 100, well, even if you say yes, we already know what you want and you're never going to get it. So you're going to leave the first chance you get. So yeah, we're going to back off at this point. Other than that, though, my firm belief and my challenge to you is always negotiate. Always. I hope you found this helpful. And I hope that if you are on the interview circuit and you're failing, which is common, you're going to fail. Get it out of your head that you're going to do anything besides fail most interviews. You're going to fail most interviews and you're going to win a few. Now, that's not meaning you should just go in there and go straight with luck. Like, oh, I'm just going to get lucky at some point and win my interview. No. You need to have a plan of attack. The best way to practice for interviews, in my opinion, is using a program like Pramp.com. I should really be sponsored by them, by the way. If you're hearing this, Pramp, you need to reach out to me and shoot me a bag because I've been talking about you forever. I use this program. I actually use this quite often to study. It's where you work with another human. A stranger comes on a screen and you do an interview with them, a technical interview. Pramp.com. It is free, not sponsored. I just think it's a wonderful thing. I also use Algo Expert. I also use educative.io. I also use LeetCode. I also use whatever the hell I need to use to learn whatever I need to learn. And the best thing you can do before an interview is to just simply ask. You wouldn't believe how many people just don't freaking ask. What am I going to be interviewed on? That's it. Magical question. They're either going to say, well, I can't tell you that, or they're going to say, oh, it's going to be data structures, algorithms, or hey, it's going to be React. You say, excellent. Knowing this information, I'd like X amount of time to study. Do you think I can have at least a week or two before our technical interview? They're going to say, yes, that's fine, or no, that's not fine. But now you have a game plan and you have an idea of what you need to do. This is the most important thing. You can't just go in there blind. Go on Glassdoor. Read about past interviews. Go on teamblind.com. Read about past interviews. Reach out to people at the company and say, hey, I'm really excited to interview with you. Anything you can tell me about this interview that might really help me succeed? It's not cheating. It's just literally trying to be prepared. It shows that you have an active interest in the company. It's a lot better than just showing up there and then saying, hey, are you ready? And you're like, I don't even know what we're doing. And they're like, oh, well, great. This is going to suck for both of us now. Trust me, the people that you're interviewing with are not much different than you. They just have a title and they work at some random place. You don't even know how they got there. So stop over romanticizing software engineers and thinking there are a bunch of smarty pants devs out there. There are quite a lot of them. There's also a lot of people that are just winging it and doing what they heard Facebook and Google do, but they're not paying those Facebook and Google salaries. Anyway, hope that's helpful. If you need some help, always feel free to hit me up. You can find me on LinkedIn. Also, you can just go to parsity.io or parsity.io/inner-circle if you want to work with me and my buddy Zubin, who I'll be having on the show very shortly after he comes back from his trip. See ya. That'll do it for today's episode of the Develop Yourself podcast. If you're serious about switching careers and becoming a software developer and building complex software and want to work directly with me and my team, go to parsity.io. And if you want more information, feel free to schedule a chat by just clicking the link in the show notes.